So this part of the saga has officially come to some sort of a conclusion, with it becoming official that former Tennessee quarterback Nico Iamaleava is now back in California with the UCLA Bruins. Jimmy, I know it was kind of rumored for a few days that that's where he was going. It finally became official yesterday. Initial reaction to an otherwise interesting move to California for the quarterback.
Bizarre. When
Yeah.
he first said that he was transferred, we all knew that he was leaving Tennessee. I thought he would wind up on the West Coast, and it could have been somewhere. I thought of Oregon, although that wasn't going to work. California, Arizona, somewhere out west. I thought that's where he was going to go. And I didn't think he'd go to UCLA for a couple of reasons. One, the fact that his younger brother, Madden, committed to UCLA, and on National Signing Day, he jilted them at the altar and went to Arkansas. So I thought, well, he's not going to UCLA. Well, he did. The other thing about UCLA that surprised me was that Chip Kelly, their head coach, left UCLA to go to Ohio State as the offensive coordinator because he told people that UCLA didn't have any NIL money. Okay, so where's this money coming for Nico? So that's interesting. Why did it take from Wednesday, when it was first reported, to Sunday for him to announce it? Were they still negotiating a deal? Perhaps. And word is, and I don't know if this is true, that he's getting $1.7 million. Well, if you take that out of the California taxes and other taxes, he's going to make $900,000, which is
Right.
far less than what he was scheduled to make if he had stayed at Tennessee. So, yeah, I was surprised it was UCLA because of those factors, and we will see. So, you know, what ends up happening. And by the way, UCLA already got a quarterback in the transfer portal from Appalachian State. So what's he going to do? So there's just a whole lot of tentacles to this whole situation. But I will say this, in my opinion, since all this went down, when Nico goes to the quarterback meeting on Thursday night at Joey Halsley's, and then skips practice, flies out of Knoxville to California on Friday, he's nowhere to be seen, nowhere to be found. Doesn't he loses contact with his teammates and his head coach? The only thing I think that his camp has done right was the statement he made when he said, "Hey, thanks Tennessee, and tough decision, but UCLA is my new home." When I read that, I thought that's about the only thing that I've seen that's come out of this Iamaleava camp that I agree with.
Yeah, and what was kind of interesting about that last message that almost felt maybe a little soured a little bit is because on his Instagram story, what was circulating was him kind of trolling maybe certain narratives out there that he wanted to sit out during the playoff game for Tennessee. So then he has a picture with him and Navy Schuler talking about like he's going to throw this game or something. So him kind of teasing and leaning into these narratives kind of takes away from that final message where he is thanking Tennessee, because that story was really the first time anyone had heard from him publicly. But I do think he ended it on the correct note, at least, you know, taking the moment to acknowledge his time at Tennessee, because it was rumored the entire time that this was Nico's parents or his dad kind of causing all of this tension in between Nico and the coaching staff. But it was always said that Nico really admired Coach Heupel and Heupel really loved Nico. So I think in this final message, it maybe reinforces that side of the narrative.
Yeah, I think this was orchestrated by his dad. I also don't believe that Nico threatened to sit out a college football playoff game against Ohio State. I've heard that. I don't believe it. I've called sources on it. I've talked to people that are involved with it. I've talked to parents of players on the team, and they said that never happened. And think about the damage he would have inflicted upon himself. I'm not
Right.
going to play against Ohio State unless I get $100,000. If you got a player that's that selfish, who's going to take him?
It's important to make the right decisions, like when to go for it on fourth down, or when to kick the field goal or go for the touchdown. It's also important to make the right insurance decisions, too. That's why my office, Trey McAdams State Farm, is here to help you select the right protection at the right price. Our office will make sure you understand your State Farm coverages, so you'll know what to expect when the unexpected happens. With Trey McAdams State Farm, it's easy to make the right call. When you want the real deal, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Proud sponsor of the Tennessee Vols.
So he would have hurt himself immensely. And not only that, this would hurt him in the NFL too, because the NFL will overlook people
A
that get
lot.
arrested.
Yeah.
But when if you're a bad teammate and you send out those kind of vibes, that's a red flag to the NFL. So yeah, I think that would have been a ridiculous thing for him to do, and I don't believe it to be true. But it was interesting, as you pointed out, that's about the only thing you heard from him after he left Tennessee was the response to some people that were ripping him, suggesting that he wanted money to play against Ohio State, which, again, I don't believe is true.
Part of the narrative that I find a little interesting that's certainly circulated is that he chose UCLA or wanted to leave Tennessee due to lack of weapons. You just go do an easy Google search, you watch with your eyes during the last football season. UCLA did not have really that strong of an offense. I think their total offense was better than Tennessee, but as far as the passing offense, receiving yards, it's not like UCLA had or will have more targets for Nico than what he had at Tennessee. So from that angle, the move to UCLA seems to contradict the idea that he's going there because Tennessee lacked the offensive weapons for Nico.
Okay, so this is all fluid, but the last time I looked, the UCLA's best receiver was in the portal.
Yeah.
And they have a really good running back. I don't know if he's in the portal or not. They do have a good running back. I don't know that he's any better than what Tennessee has. He's certainly not as good as what Dylan Sampson was.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm with you. I don't think his weapons at UCLA are as good as they are at Tennessee. He's going to make less money. He's on a team that went 5-7. He's on a team that doesn't project to be much better than that. So he's gone to a lesser team with a lesser supporting cast. And, okay, I won't say a lesser conference, but a team that's projected to do a lot less than what Tennessee's projected to do.
Yeah, and I also think, I don't know how much of a factor it really does become, but I think players and students want to go somewhere that is cool. For UCLA, they don't have a fan base that supports their football team the way that Vol fans support Tennessee. Granted, the Rose Bowl playing there is fantastic. It makes for a fantastic playoff venue. But a Saturday to Saturday, it does not fill out at any sense of the way that it does at Tennessee. So as far as maybe the pecking order, it might be low on the list, but it certainly does not check off that part of the list for Nico in that move.
Neyland Stadium seats around 100,000, and for a lot of games, they sell out and have close to 100,000. The Rose Bowl Stadium, where UCLA plays its home games, it seats around 92,000. I bet you their actual attendance is no more than 50,000.
Yeah, I was gonna say 92 people, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just from that standpoint, and I'll say this too, from that standpoint, Nico, to me, comes across as a loser in this deal. But you know what? You could argue that so does Tennessee. I appreciate them taking a stand. I think they did the right thing. But as far as this season, they've lost a better quarterback than what they have on campus right now. Now, I may change my mind in a day or two or a week if Tennessee goes out and gets a really outstanding quarterback, or even somebody's really good, somebody is good or better than Nico, then I could change my mind. But right now, Nico's lost out financially and with a lesser team. Tennessee's lost out right now because they don't have a quarterback as good as Nico on campus right now. So right now I see it as a lose-lose. But I'm reserving my opinion or the opportunity to change my mind depending on what Tennessee does in the portal with quarterback.
Yeah, before you write it in pen, we have to see a couple more things transpire. And, I think before we get to the final step, talking about the current quarterback room and those two quarterbacks and MacIntyre and Merklinger, Tennessee still could find somebody in the portal. Of course, they have a couple more days to put their name there. It doesn't seem that the guys that are in the portal maybe are fitting Tennessee's needs. So as this spring portal session goes, what do you think Tennessee is looking for? What do they need? And do you think they'll find it in this go around?
I don't know that they're going to find it. It's going to be hard. I mean, they could get anywhere between a really good quarterback that could fit their system and make their offense more productive than it was a year. Remember now, Tennessee offensively was 9th in the SEC in points, and Nico was 10th in yards passing per game. That's not very good. Okay. So Tennessee could get somebody as good or better than Nico, or they could get a Gaston Moore, somebody just to have a third quarterback on your roster, which you need for depth. And would they win a lot of games with Gaston Moore? As much as I appreciate him hanging around, I think they're a 7-win, maybe an 8-win team with him if things break just right. So there are some quarterbacks in the portal. There's some other quarterbacks that haven't been in the portal that people are talking about. There is a quarterback from Appalachian State named Joey Aguilar who enter the portal, and then sign with UCLA. Well, does he have this opportunity now to back out of that deal? I don't know if he signed or not. Let me say it was an agreement.
Yes.
I don't know if it's signed.
He's
So
committed, yeah.
yeah. So is Tennessee interested in him? Maybe Tennessee goes in that direction. When I looked up Aguilar, he completed 55.9% of his passes, 3,000 yards, 23 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. That's not very attractive to me. He ran for 270 yards and 2 touchdowns. I want a quarterback that completes more than 60% to run this offense. I want a quarterback that's got better than a 1.5 to 1 touchdown interception ratio. That's not very good. Yeah, I'm looking for 3 to 1, at least 2 to 1. So that's what you got in Aguilar. Now, is he better than Merklinger? He might be because of his experience, but I don't know that there's a great deal of difference between Aguilar and Merklinger. I've saw some other quarterbacks that have mentioned his possibilities, and they're not even in the portal to my knowledge. But they both completed less than 60% of their passes. They were in the 55, 58% range. I don't want that running this offense. You've got to be an accurate passer. And one of them, the guy from Iowa State, Rocco Beck, had 2 outstanding receivers, and yet he couldn't complete 60% of his passes. And I watched him play. He's hot and cold, very erratic. So I don't think there's a lot of great selections in the portal right now. As you mentioned, there are a couple more days in which quarterbacks can enter the portal. The other thing to remember is that you don't have to sign somebody at that time. Somebody could enter the portal now and sign with somebody in June. So you just have to enter the portal by this date, and then you've got a lot of time in which to make a decision about where to go. So I don't know that there's a great answer for Tennessee. I think there might be a decent answer. And Paige, I've wrestled with this. My initial thought was get the best quarterback you can that has 1 year of eligibility left, because you don't want to lose Merklinger. And you don't want to lose MacIntyre. You don't want to lose your 5-star quarterback, Faison Brandon, who's coming in 2026.
Mm-hmm.
And then I heard the argument that, hey, you win right now. Do the best you can right now. You worry about the quarterback situation later. That's a pretty good argument. I don't know where you stand on that, but I see that as a pretty good argument to say, hey, if these quarterbacks want to transfer and leave, we'll just keep hitting the portal to find the best quarterback we can get.
Yeah, and I think, you go back to when, Nico was saying thank you as he was leaving. I think he did a lot to help this Tennessee football program get back to that national attention, where he did or was the first 5-star quarterback Tennessee was able to recruit since 2002. And I think that's why you were able to get guys like George MacIntyre, a homegrown kid, while you're in conversations with Faison Brandon, because you've shown what you can do with these caliber of quarterbacks. You have the support and the program that can kind of take care of and flourish with these top recruits. And I think that's where Tennessee a few years ago was a down program, because they didn't have the resources to really highlight and take advantage of what these 5-star talents could do. Now you can. We've seen that with Nico. So I think if you get your quarterback for today or for tomorrow, and maybe that does make Faison Brandon decide to go to LSU instead, or MacIntyre ends up transferring. I think if you get your quarterback now and you prove that you can win with these quarterbacks, and then you get the talent and the weapons on offense to go along with it over the next couple of years, then I think that's okay. But you also want to continue to develop and take care of the guys who decided to stay, that are still here. And you want to show that you've got some loyalty to those guys, and you're not always grass is greener on the other side. We don't care who's here. We're always looking for something better.
I like quarterbacks that compete for the starting job.
Right.
But that's a pie in the sky thought now, isn't it? Because a lot of
not a ton of Gaston Moore's left that will just stay and compete.
Yeah, they don't necessarily want to compete for a job. They want a job handed to them, so they go somewhere else where they don't have to compete. And unfortunately, so it will be interesting to see how this transpires with Tennessee. I do think their focus right now is just getting the best quarterback they can get, whether he has 1 or 2 years or 3 years of eligibility left. Who is that going to be? I don't know. What quarterbacks could enter the portal the next couple of days? I don't know. But I'll be curious to see if Tennessee has what I would consider a significant upgrade at the quarterback position. Now, if Merklinger wins the job and he's the dude, how good's he going to be? I don't know. I think he's a pretty good athlete. I think he's a pretty good runner. And watching him on a limited basis, boy, he made some wild throws in that spring game, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and it looks like the highlights that I was able to put together of that spring game that's back on our homepage. It does look like, and of course I don't have an all 22 cam, so it's hard to see why MacIntyre's passes ended up being a higher completion rate than Merklinger's did, and he was on defense, offense, and so forth. But it did look like from the highlights that we got at a very micro level that George MacIntyre looked very strong, looked very confident and poised and what he was doing. So you do wonder, if you move kind of to our next point, what happens during the true off season or during the summer and in fall camp? Do they approach the quarterback room, if they don't get a true starter out of the portal, as if we're starting over and we're going to find our true starter over the next 4 months?
Yeah, and I will tell you this, from what I've been told, the MacIntyre camp does not believe MacIntyre's ready. They want him to redshirt. He needs to sit. He's not very big. He's
like Nico when he first got here, the very skinny. Yeah.
And MacIntyre's skinny too.
Yes.
Not quite as tall as Nico. So that they would like for him to redshirt, learn the offense, and kind of get acclimated to what Tennessee's doing rather than be thrust into the action. So they would prefer that. I think the Merklinger camp, he's already redshirted, so I don't think they'd have any issue with saying, hey, let's give him a shot out there. But you just got a lack of experience. It would be interesting to see right now, if you rated Tennessee's quarterback position versus the rest of the SEC, where would it be?
They got to be at the bottom. I think there has to be a lot of nerves and uncertainty within that room.
I mean, it couldn't be any better than 15 or 14. That'd be the best. So that's not exactly what you want going into the season. So, no. And I focus a lot more on what you do in SEC play. Look, Tennessee's offense wasn't that good last year, in particular when you look at what they did in the SEC. Their numbers were inflated. This off the top of my head, but I believe Tennessee averaged like 62 points a game in non-conference games.
Yes.
They averaged about 27 in SEC play. That is a
night and day difference.
So then when you look at it that way, well, they averaged 35.5 points a game. Okay. They did, but not against the teams that you need to average 35 a game. So that to me is a more important stat. So we'll see where Tennessee goes at quarterback, but I'm not overly optimistic they're going to land a great one, but hey, we'll see.
Yeah, because I think it's kind of a critique that we had against or with Rick Barnes' team towards the end of the season, when you want D-Stone to be in there because you need the depth, but they didn't play him early in the season, so he's not prepared at the end of the season. I think maybe there'd be more confidence in George or Jake Merklinger if he played a little bit more a season ago. But Nico needed so much development that even in games like UT Chattanooga, he's playing well into the third quarter. So that's taking reps and snaps away from Merklinger that maybe could have benefited him in this crazy instance this season.
Well, and you had no idea you were losing Nico. So as you mentioned, you're still developing Nico.
Right.
Now, I do think there were times when they could have put the backup in sooner than they did.
Like they did when Joe Milton was there. They're like,
all right, let's get Nico third quarter. Hey, Nico's playing into the fourth quarter some of those games. So I think they could have gone to the bench a little bit sooner like that. As you point out, the Milton versus Nico deal. But they had no idea. Well,
even just from an injury standpoint, you just want to have more reps for your backups because of even just the risk of injury, not even like, I think we're going to lose our starting quarterback before spring practice, You're
not even thinking about risking losing him to NIL. It's, as you pointed out, it's the risk of losing somebody to injury. So, I think they could have now, but Merklinger he has got to really have a great offseason. I mean, I'm talking about right now, through the summer into August. He needs to really dive into the playbook. He needs to throw as often as he can to the receivers that he's got and really work on his game, because he could be the guy. And I'm not going to say that he would flop if he started. I just haven't seen anything that gives me confidence he could jump in there and win you 8 or 9 games as an SEC starter.
To take maybe a temperature check of how the first week of the spring portal window has gone to maybe what happens towards the close of it. Do you think Tennessee gets a guy that ends up becoming the number one, or do you think their number one starting quarterbacks in the room already?
I think they're going to find a number one, but I don't think it's going to be clear separation. I mean, so this name of Avery Johnson at Kansas State's been mentioned. He's one on this list that's completed less than 60% of his passes, but he's the reason Kansas State said bye to Will Howard, who went to Ohio State. They thought Avery Johnson was going to be as good or better, and he had more years of eligibility, and maybe there was NIL factor in there too. And I mentioned Rocco Becht. He would be an upgrade. Both of those guys would. Joey Aguilar might be. Again, I'm concerned about that completion percentage. I do think they will find a starter in the portal, and but I don't know that on a 1 to 10 scale that this quarterback's going to be a 10 and Merklinger a 7.
Okay.
It might be more like this quarterback's an 8 and Merklinger's a 7. In other words, not as much separation between those two.
Just marginally better. Well,
yes,
we shall see. Yeah, we'll see how, maybe the rest of this week goes, if anyone else has entered their name in, and then what Tennessee does over the next couple of months if they end up finding somebody that fits that bill. But we've got part 3 with Burrow Camp coming up on Thursday, so that'll be an exciting conversation at 1 o'clock, and a lot more on Tennessee Vols and Lady Vols as they get closer and closer to the SEC tournaments. It's crazy how fast everything goes when you're distracted with Nico news.
good point.
Awesome. Well, we'll talk to you guys later this week.